Do our conversations about crypto have you wanting to do more with your career? Check out Fidelity, which has been exploring Bitcoin and blockchain since 2014. They were the first traditional asset manager to launch a native crypto business and also among the first to launch a Bitcoin exchange-traded product. So why consider Fidelity? Because they invest in their talent with continuing education programs and they invest in their technology, ensuring associates are working with the latest and greatest so that their crypto teams can continue to improve and evolve their product, staying ahead of the rapidly changing digital asset landscape. With Fidelity's iterative, scalable approach, built to meet today's increasing demands across the digital space and a commitment to developing innovative tools, there's never been a more interesting time to work in crypto and DeFi at Fidelity. Explore Fidelity Crypto Careers today. Go to crypto.fidelitycareers.com to learn more. That's crypto.fidelitycareers.com. Fidelity is an equal opportunity employer. And now it is on with the show. My guest today is Alexei. He is the co-founder of Bob, of course, the gateway to Bitcoin DeFi, one of the safest and easiest way to access a yield on your Bitcoin. We'll learn all about this today. Welcome to the show, Alexei.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure. Let's do what we do at the beginning of the show. It would be super cool if you could please introduce yourself. Would love to hear some of your personal and professional backstory. Yeah, what have you been doing in the lead up to co-founding Bob?
Well, for me, it's been over 10 years been working in Bitcoin research. I got into it quite early during my bachelor's thesis, discovered Bitcoin, and got obviously excited about, the aspect of, neutral digital currency. But what really interested me most at that time was not just the financial aspect, but what else we could do with the technology. I fell in love with Namecoin, which was the first altcoin, and tried to, solve the problem of decentralizing the DNS, so improving the way we can have preventing censorship of websites and so on. And since then, I kind of did like a random walk of different research topics in the blockchain space, looking at merge mining, wrote the first research reports on, what it can do, the pros and cons, and like where it actually breaks and damages ecosystems. And then essentially really focused on the intersection of Bitcoin and, other technologies, other chains, realizing quite early, especially like during the block size wars, that Bitcoin is not going to change frequently. We're not going to see many upgrades, adding opcodes like researchers love to suggest back in the day, like let's add this opcode and it's going to do all these cool things, is not going to happen. And we need to find ways to, put Bitcoin to use without relying on centralized parties and do that in the most secure way possible. So I started a PhD, which was, again, a pure coincidence that I got the position. It was funded by blockchain.com back in the day, one of the biggest companies in the space. Worked initially on the Lightning Network. Quickly, we realized that it's not going to scale, and then focused our efforts on, okay, let's take Bitcoin and bring it into other ecosystems in the most trust minimized way possible. And that's essentially what we've been doing ever since. And also then had a chance to work on very early Ethereum rollup kind of research. And that's also where I met my co-founder, who comes more from the Ethereum side. So Dominic is more the ETH guy. He was one of the few people I knew back then that got into crypto through Ethereum, which was very fascinating. And he worked on stablecoins, DeFi, smart contract languages, and together we kind of combined these two angles in the company.
Yeah, I mean, you've been busy, both of you, I guess. Then, so you could say that you helped invent the hybrid L2 model, and you co-authored that the BitVM paper. So if you look back, how much of Bob, I suppose, do you kind of see as research vision turned into reality, and how much is kind of, I guess a pragmatic idea to kind of bring Bitcoiners and Ethereum's maxis together?
It's a good mix. I mean, we call ourselves recovering academics. We did eventually complete our PhD, but we essentially spun out the company during our research times, paused the PhD, because it always felt a bit weird of, you work so hard, you come up with these new improvements to protocols, you write a paper, it gets accepted, and then you stop. That's where it really gets interesting, and you kind of drop everything and you go to the next thing. And we were always really wanted to build these things and get them into production, because, like, if there's a paper, nobody reads it. What do we actually achieve? And so Bob is, I would arguably say, the culmination of really, like, almost 10 years of research prior, on different bridge designs, on rollups, on, Bitcoin opcodes. And with it, like, in all fairness, I think we had almost already given up on being able to hack something like BitVM into Bitcoin. So when Robin had, like, the early idea to the concepts of BitVM, that was like, a huge moment for us, realizing, okay, it actually can be done. Like, the thing we've been trying to do all these years, okay, there is a path to actually achieving trustless Bitcoin bridging. And that's when we started working with Robin on, using BitVM for bridge designs. And with Bob, the goal was to not just, build for ethos and build technology that, maybe one day people will use. We've had our fair share of experience in the space, working in ecosystems where that was the mentality. We'll build the tech and users will come, and, that's what we're going to do. With Bob, we are applying a lot of learnings from previous endeavors, where we understand that, product, but also distribution of that product is super important. If we want people to use Bitcoin and DeFi, we have to go where they are today. We have to start with Ethereum, which is the hub of DeFi innovation. You can't tell everyone, oh, if you want Bitcoin DeFi, you're going to have to change completely how you use DeFi today. You have to use new wallets, new types of infrastructure pieces. You have to come to this other older chain, which has 10-minute block times, and, go there. Or you have to go to my isolated layer 2 chain. And I'm not going to talk to Ethereum, but I expect the users to come. And to be fair, this sounds funny, but that's what has been tried before in the Bitcoin space. Like, existing side chains had that approach where they really went kind of, I'm going to take this technology and I'm going to sell it to Bitcoin maxis. And that didn't work. So you have to understand that Bitcoin maximalism is can be interpreted in different ways. I consider myself a Bitcoin maxi because I've been working on Bitcoin for the last 10 years, but I'm not what people would probably say a laser eye maxi, where I say everything else is bad. On the opposite, I think Bitcoin can learn a lot from Ethereum, and layer 2s were invented in the Ethereum land. ZK research received funding because Ethereum community pushed it. And all of that is basically now being taken and applied to Bitcoin. And that is why we can move so much faster than Ethereum did when they started first building rollups. So I think it always requires a bit of a more pragmatic approach. And also the realization that, look, whether you're Bitcoin maxi, ETH maxi, Solana maxi, the one thing we can all agree on is that Bitcoin is secure and it's going to be around for a while. And look, everybody loves Bitcoin. There's so many Bitcoin holders on Ethereum. And if you go to an ETH conference, you ask who has Bitcoin, all hands are going to go up. And by now at Bitcoin conferences, even the maxi ones, if you ask, well, who has ETH and other assets, everybody's going to raise their hands. So there's a big overlap in the community, and these maxi communities, they're in the minority at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think,
Yeah.
times are
No, I
changing.
think, yeah, look, I think that's really well said, Alexei. It's the pragmatic approach, and I think, as much as you hear the kind of noisy maximalists from either side on crypto Twitter or wherever, I think most people agree with that. Just, I think, Alexei, it'd be good just to for listeners that are listening and maybe they hold some Bitcoin, just give like a kind of a high level summary of what is possible, what it's possible for people to do with their Bitcoin with Bob, just in a simple way. What can they do?
Well, in the ideal scenario, you won't even know that you're using Bob, right? We want to be in the background. In the back end, we work with applications, we work with wallets, with institutional staking providers, with custodians, starting to work with fintechs. Their users have Bitcoin, whether they're big institutional funds, family offices, treasuries, or they're more DeFi degen, power users that use different Web3 wallets, or they're retail users that, have been accumulating Bitcoin slowly over time on things like Revolut, Lemon Cash, these neobanks that have been moving into the space. And what we provide to these players is a single unified gateway to access Bitcoin DeFi opportunities. The problem that we see in Bitcoin DeFi is that although everybody wants it and every big chain and every big protocol is pushing to onboard Bitcoin liquidity, Today, if you want to take a Bitcoin and put it into DeFi, you have to figure out which bridge to use out of the 50 plus, which chain do you go to? You have to understand the risks and trade-offs, which are usually very intransparent. And as a result, it's currently not accessible for a non-expert user. And so what we do is we basically say, look, let's hide the complexity. Let's provide a unified access point for new users that have Bitcoin that want to put it to work in DeFi, whether it is to earn yield, to use it as collateral to borrow stable coins, or whatever else, buy other assets. And, let's help them get into the space. And under the hood, what we then do, and that's kind of going a level deeper, more into the technical side, we have on the Bob chain, what we focus on is building the most secure and accessible way to use Bitcoin and DeFi, where we work with tier one protocols like, Uniswap, Euler, now also working with Avan on like a deployment, work with institutional custodians, and, bring in Bitcoin security and, the most trustless Bitcoin bridge, so that in the long term, you really can say, look, if I have my Bitcoin, I can put it to use in DeFi. It's trustless, it's native, just like, using ETH and Arbitrum is native. And what you can do there is really use Bitcoin to earn yield, right? So stake your Bitcoin in different ways, whether it is to secure protocols like the Bob chain itself. And again, staking was previously never accessible to Bitcoin. It was, the thing that had PMF in crypto with Ethereum, Solana, and so on, but never for Bitcoin. Well, that is now possible, and you can stake your Bitcoin to secure Bob and, earn some fees. Or you can use it in DeFi, whether you want to just, put it to work and there's some strategies running in the background and you don't want to get into much detail, or you start trading more actively. And my personal dream is that eventually you'll be able to put your Bitcoin into different vaults that earn yield. And at the same time, you can borrow stablecoins. So take out microloans and spend against your Bitcoin and have these self-repaying loans as Bitcoin continues to appreciate in value over the dollar and fiat currencies over the next couple of years, because again, it has a fixed supply, whereas these other assets do not have that.
Yep.
And if you want to be more experimental, if you want to really, start looking for newer opportunities, if you want to chase the yield, well, then we provide you with a one-click access to all the other chains. So we have this very secure network ourselves, but we see that every big chain, every big DeFi protocol, they all want Bitcoin. They might not be specializing in Bitcoin like the protocols on Bob do, but they have product offerings that, would like to include Bitcoin. And so what we offer users and these protocols is we connect them in the way that a user can go from Bitcoin to directly borrowing BTC on Solana with one transaction. And we help with the routing and we hide all this complexity, and it's just one click and you're in your DeFi protocol on whatever chain you like. And you can chase yield opportunities and new things with Bitcoin in a much more accessible way.
Yeah, very well articulated, Alexei. And it's funny though, because when people think of DeFi, the vast majority of people, they still think of Ethereum, whereas I guess Bitcoin DeFi is still probably an emerging idea and an emerging market, even though obviously the market cap of Bitcoin is far greater than Ethereum or anything else. What do you think needs to happen? And I guess a lot of it is just education with all the different services and platforms and ecosystems that you work with. But what do you think has to happen for people to kind of make that click and think maybe it's worth investigating, trying to get some yield on my Bitcoin and not just being a hodler?
Well, I mean, Bitcoin DeFi has product market fit and validation. It just seems so small compared to Bitcoin's market cap. But and of course, we have to distinguish between native Bitcoin DeFi, which is indeed trust minimized, and there is not much of it, right? Probably Babylon staking, which is still in its infancy, is like the main one right now with a couple of $1 billion, which sounds like a lot, but it's like tiny. It's like 0.1% of the entirety of Bitcoin. But if you now look at Bitcoin DeFi in the land of Ethereum, Solana, with wrappers that, yes, they're centralized and there's 50 of them and whatnot, but there's $40 billion of Bitcoin in these chains, which accounts for a large portion of the DeFi activity. And that is actually proof that people want to use Bitcoin and DeFi, and that there is demand. It's just that, they struggle. And if we look at, the amount of Bitcoin that's in DeFi right now versus the DeFi activity on Ethereum, and if you compare the DeFi TVL of Ethereum and add stablecoins in the ETH network to its market cap, and then you apply that same ratio to Bitcoin, we have 10 to 100x growth potential here. And to unlock more BTC to enter DeFi, we think we need to do two things, and it will happen in two steps. Step one, and that's what's happening right now, as already mentioned, we are at the start of a Bitcoin DeFi gold rush. People have realized, that Bitcoin is the best asset in the market. And when I say people, it's not just, the DeFi players. They've known that for a long time, but institutions, retail, they have so much demand now for putting Bitcoin to work. And what you see is more and more BTC moving into the DeFi ecosystem. But to unlock this, we have to, again, provide this abstraction layer. We have to make it super easy to take Bitcoin and deploy it into these different protocols. If you talk to institutional players, like, again, fintechs and people who deal with retail clients and have to offer them products, for them, and this is a controversy in my opinion, Bitcoin DeFi feels risky compared to ETH DeFi. Although Bitcoin is more secure and is usually perceived as a bigger, more secure asset. But because there's a lack of tooling, it's quite intransparent, it's so fragmented, it's hard to use, people still shy away from it. And so the first step, if you want to take, Bitcoin DeFi from the current 40 billion to 100 billion, or higher to 200 billion, or to a trillion, let's say, you first have to, solve this UX problem. Make it super easy for people to go from Bitcoin into different applications and back without dealing with bridges and chains and whatnot. And once we've done that, the next step, and this is the mid-long-term goal, and it's going to take a while, if we want to unlock the next billion users to use Bitcoin in DeFi and not just, put it in their bank as buy ETFs, and, then go ask their bank if they can send Bitcoin around, which makes no sense at all. If we want them to adopt DeFi, well, then we have to provide them with a native way of doing that. And native means secure by Bitcoin. So you don't really have to understand what the proof of stake models of other chains are. And you don't risk the centralization aspects of bridges when you put Bitcoin to work, but it is native, it is secured by Bitcoin. And that, I think, is still a very big hurdle for many, many players to comfortably say, yes, Bitcoin DeFi is really is mature. And once we have that, and we have the technology now with BitVM and Bitcoin Layer 2 is emerging, once this comes out, and it's going to take 2, 3, 4 years for this technology to mature, but that's when I think we will be able to onboard really millions of users on a monthly basis, because the intermediaries that we still will have to obviously have, the distribution partners, the custodians, the wallets, the fintechs, they will be convinced eventually that this is secure. And once we get them over the finish line, well, that's when you will see a massive flood of users enter the ecosystem.
Yep. Very well said, Alexei. All right. Well, for developers that are listening, or people from other parts of I guess the Ethereum DeFi ecosystem, people that perhaps interested in looking at utilizing the various parts of your technology stack, what is the best way for people to start to learn more and to get involved and take a look at what you're doing, Alexei?
I mean, for users, it's pretty straightforward, right? We have a variety of applications where you can go and, you can experiment with different Bitcoin products. And we have a simple earn page that offers a few different opportunities, like strategies to start. Please, of course, do your own research. These are still financial products. If you're a developer, if you're a builder, well, the best way is to go to our docs page. And then you can really decide whether you just want to plug in to this multi-chain Bitcoin routing product, which, focuses on onboarding new users and, connecting protocols to Bitcoin holders. Or if you want to dig deeper and contribute to native Bitcoin staking, BitVM, and these more technical aspects. And there's lots of information on our docs under docs.gobob.xyz.
Yes, indeed. And so that website again, folks, gobob.xyz. Link, of course, is in the show notes. I guess that means it's time to start to finish up the show, Alexei, and we generally do that by running you as the guest through the very famous Crypto Conversation Hot Take Round. Are you up for it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it, Alexei. I'm just going to run some questions at you, and I want you to give me your honest answers, hot take style, if you like. Question 1, which is very relevant, I think. Let's see what you have to say. Where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
I mean, I would realistically speaking, I'm definitely more in the multi-chain world. But my mission and vision is to take Bitcoin and make it accessible to everyone. So I guess, I'm a Bitcoin maxi hidden under a multi-chain cape, I guess.
I like it. What would you say then is your firmest conviction crypto opinion?
My strongest opinion is that we need to stop catering to the same group of people in DeFi and realize that crypto will only grow if we start onboarding new users, which means we need to really focus on distribution and not just spinning up the next yield farm, the next meme coin. These things can be done and they're very interesting, but they should be done with a purpose tied to, okay, well, who does this bring into the space? Why should this exist? And I think if we don't do that and we continue down the path of, jumping from narrative to narrative, eventually crypto will implode in the sense it will become unattractive to new users because, people will just be disillusioned about what can happen, what the opportunities are.
Yes, very well said. All right, well, look, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. Now, 10 years is a long time in Bitcoin and crypto, but look, anything you like here, Alexa, I guess, Bob, Bitcoin DeFi in general, what does it look like in 10 years' time?
Well, I think in 10 years' time, there's going to be two options. And like as Satoshi himself said, there's going to be a ton of transactions or not at all. And I personally obviously am biased to, well, I think in 10 years' time, we can achieve what I think will be a success for Bitcoin DeFi is that there's more Bitcoin in DeFi than there is in the ETFs, right? That's for me the metric to look for, right? Do banks take hold of Bitcoin and do we just take Bitcoin as an asset and plug it into the old financial system? Or do we succeed in finally offering a better, more transparent system that, follows Bitcoin's vision and kind of, the learnings we have from all the traditional system that we have today? I think in 10 years' time, we'll be there. I think in 10 years' time, Bitcoin DeFi or DeFi will no longer be called, using DeFi. It'll be the norm. I think in 10 years' time, we will not be saying, I'm going to go use DeFi or while you use your banks. No, it's just going to be like, yeah, I'm just using, like, I'm putting this Bitcoin into a financial product or I'm borrowing some, whatever fiat currency we'll have around them. Obviously the dollar will still be around in 10 years. But I think, Bitcoin will be, first of all, much more dominant. It will be a global neutral asset as it is already becoming. And I think there'll be more BTC in decentralized systems than in centralized.
I like it. All right. Another way of thinking about this is it's a wonderful quote by William Gibson, who famously said that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Now, with that in mind, Alexei, can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people aren't aware of it?
Well, that's a tricky one. Because like in my crypto bubble, people are quite aware of the things you can do. But I still think that we're pretty early in terms of controlling your finances, not having to ask for permission, whether you can invest or deposit assets into something. Because in DeFi it already exists and the UX is actually so much better in many cases than the UX of centralized systems. It's just that outside this still very young DeFi community, right? And yes, we have millions of users, but compared to the global population, it's still very new. And people don't realize how easy it is to use DeFi by now, how low the smart contract risk has become. And I think it's just, a matter of perception of, oh, crypto is still risky and the meme coin trading. And people are still slow to kind of, detach from their old habits of going to a bank to like, oh, I have control over my finances. It's happening, but it also takes a generation to kind of, uh, gradually enter the space to really like a generation that no longer is used to going to the bank counter, but by default does everything online. So everything's here. It's now a matter of just, gradually, continuously improving the UX and scalability of this, but it all works. We have all the tools, all the products are here to actually replace traditional banks.
Yeah, got it. Brings us nicely to the final question, Alexei, which is very simply, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, or TV show?
Oof. Oh, that's a tricky one. So I'm a big fan of Hyperion. I think this is one of the best science fiction books I've ever read. I was depressed for 3 months after finishing the books. Obviously a huge fan of Dune. And in terms of science fiction films, torn between probably Interstellar and Dune, but Dune because I read the books and there is so much fan service in there. And I think Interstellar is probably one of the best science fiction movies out there.
Can't argue with any of them. Some absolute classics there. Thank you, Alexei. And look, thank you for coming and spending some time with us today on the podcast. And nothing else to do really except to close out the show. And I would invite you to do so again by just directing people to the GoBob ecosystem and all the resources that are there. And of course, shout out your socials, etc. Go for gold.
So you can find everything on our website, gobob.xyz, or follow us on Twitter under build_on_Bob, or you can find myself. If you Google Alexei Bob, you're going to find everything online as well. We have a very big community of over 400,000 members across Twitter, Discord, Telegram. If you have any questions about Bitcoin DeFi, want to understand, what's coming, what's new, join us on one of our channels. Again, Discord, Telegram, Twitter, and I think we're spinning up a few more. And catch us at one of the upcoming events in Korea, in Singapore, in Argentina. Yeah, I think that's it.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. All the best and bye for now.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.